On the Healthy Human Revolution podcast, Dr. Lori Marbas interviews nutrition and lifestyle medicine experts and extraordinary guests whose informative and inspiring stories will empower you with the knowledge to transform your life and health.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm Dr. Lori Marbas, and I'm so honored and excited to welcome Tyler Mayoras. How are you today?
Very good. I'm very excited to be on the podcast. I love it. It's great interviews.
No, thank you so much. I started this podcast just out of pure selfishness because I wanted to meet amazing people like yourself. And so it's continued to work for 5 years now. So I would love to keep kind of dive into you because you've got such a rich history. And I think there's so much that we can learn from you. Could you tell us a little bit about, maybe let's start with your business background, because that will definitely lead to your plant-based journey and where you are now.
Sure. So I have spent over 20 years in private equity and working with companies. I started as a generalist working in a lot of different industries, but did a couple food deals along the way. And for the last 12 years or so of that journey, I was focused 100% on food and agriculture.
Wow.
And then transitioned to Cool Beans about 8 months ago. Yeah.
In October, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me, I'm because my first really learning to focus on a plant-based diet it started with a patient encounter in Rifle, Colorado. I don't know if you're familiar with little Western rural towns. The people that are in Rifle are going to be the people you'd expect to live in a town called Rifle.
Right.
But as we started learning more just about not only our own health, you do learn about agriculture and the food system, and it was rather, I wouldn't say devastating, but close to devastating for me as a physician, seeing what I was up against, really re-looking how I look at patients. Could you tell us a little bit about just maybe the history of the food agriculture, where we are now, what's going on exactly?
Yeah, it's a pretty broken system right now, and which is one of the things that really led me to a plant-based lifestyle. I was doing a lot of research, and I was at a conference, and they were talking about the number of greenhouse gases from the animal agriculture. And I was shocked to learn at the conference that they were saying 15%. And I really didn't believe them. And I went back to Chicago and I dug into USDA data and EPA data. And I actually built it up from the ground up. And it's not just the animals, because that's one segment, and the processing of animals, et cetera. But it's also everything that you feed the animals and the inputs to that agriculture. And I came up with a number between 16 and 19%. And I was just bored. And that immediately, that's more than all the cars and trucks on the road. And it just said, okay, I've got to make a change. And so I've moved down the direction of going plant-based at that point. And I was fully plant-based by early 2017. But one of the interesting things about agriculture is that most farmers are basically monocroppers. They plant one thing. And when you drive through the countryside in Illinois or Indiana, when you see all this corn and soybean, and you're thinking, that feeds America. It doesn't. 70% of our farmland is fed to animals. Well, 65% is to animals and 5% is to ethanol to make fuel.
Right.
And so that was shocking to me. And then when you monoculture, or you just grow one thing, you end up destroying the soil. And so every year, and I learned that on a consulting assignment, and I thought that he was just doing it wrong. He had 30,000 acres and he only planted corn basically all the time. And it turns out that most large scale farmers are just doing corn on 90% of their land. And the reason is they found that it's cheaper just to add NPK to the soil, which is nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. But though that NPK to create, if you planted a lot of different plants, it would put those different elements back into the soil, like beans and legumes put nitrogen into the soil. If you buy those chemicals, there's huge greenhouse gases inherent in making those. They basically heat up the air to a very high temperature to create liquid nitrogen and create a chemical process. And so it's just a broken system. Dead soil leads to desertification. And there's just this ongoing stream of things that are wrong. And so moving toward a plant-based lifestyle has a lot more benefits than just the health, because it also has the greenhouse gas impacts, and then it also has all these other environmental benefits and biodiversity benefits.
There's so much to talk about, even in that one statement you mentioned, because, part of my plant-based journey is I just have an insatiable curiosity, which has been good in many things, but sometimes it gets me in trouble. But
Yeah.
I really was interested in the Rodell Institute. Are you familiar with them? I'm sure you must be.
The which one?
The Rodell
Oh
Institute
yeah,
in
for sure.
Pennsylvania.
Yes, they're great.
Oh my goodness, I love talking to those guys. So I was the first, we launched, that's the plaque I got from the Plantation
Yeah.
Project. We launched the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention in the fall of 2017. And there were 3 of us on a phone call, and it literally grew out of my head and our sticky walls. I put some sticky things, but now we're, got Kim Williams as our editor-in-chief. He's actually in
Yeah.
Chicago at Rush. But it was really
Yeah.
interesting. Part of their work, they work with Rodell. And I just was so fascinated about the looking at the soil and the biodiversity that comes in such a small amount. I mean, it's like a universe in and of itself. It's like, think of it as your own microbiota. It's actually in the soil.
Absolutely.
Could you
Yeah.
speak to that a little bit about what's important?
Yeah,
that we should look
and
at?
I don't have deep knowledge like a Dr. Zach Bush or something
Sure.
like that, but he's
Yeah.
fascinating to listen to on that whole topic, as well as our gut bacteria. And I think one of the things that I didn't realize about soil until I did a lot of research was that good, healthy soil that's alive and teeming with bacteria and earthworms, et cetera, really retains moisture and retains carbon. And so we sequester carbon into the soil, which then locks it away and takes it out of the atmosphere. But it also retains moisture and creates humidity, which create rain, et cetera. And so if you don't have that, and you've got dry, dead soil from spraying glyphosate and from just monoculturing one crop all the time, in essence, you don't get that moisture, you don't get a lot of the different rainfall, and then you don't have a lot of the nutrient value that's in the soil naturally from those bacteria. So it's a cycle and it hurts the biodiversity because it kills the insects, kills the birds and other animals and other plant life if we don't have good, healthy soil. That's critical.
Absolutely. And erosion, I mean, when you start thinking about our topsoil is just literally washing away because of how we're treating it. And it's frightening. I worry about my kids and all the others, young future generations. And and
that nitrogen that we talked about,
yeah,
when they spray that on the soil, and again, you've got dead soil that isn't alive, so it's not retaining moisture. 35% of it runs off into our waterways.
Yeah.
And then you see these red tides and things like that where they're just dead zones because we have too much nitrogen in the water that's run off of our crops.
Have you seen Seaspiracy?
Yes, very, very good.
Goodness
Twice, fascinating movie.
It's again, another everything goes back to eating plants. It's just a simple what's on the end of your fork. Everything goes back to that. But speaking to the agricultural component of that, so people, we vote with our dollars, and that's what I tell my patients. I'm like, you're voting for your health with your dollars, and you're voting for the system that you live in the world.
Right.
Where can we see organic agriculture going? Is that, people say this isn't sustainable, but I'm thinking, well, before we had conventional farming, that's what we had, and it seemed to be doing okay. But, can we feed a world of, potentially teeming 9 billion people at some point in the future with organic type practices, eating plants? I think.
If we all moved to a plant-based diet, we'd probably need about 40% of the crops that we currently grow. It's fascinating. But and one of the things you hear about is regenerative agriculture, which I think is great and fascinating. It's often grabbed by the meat industry as a solution that you need animals in that process, and you do, but the number of animals you need is a small fraction of what you would see in a CAFO kind of meat facility that's raising a lot of animals. But what's really critical about that, and what we need to look at as a society from a farming standpoint, is the diversity of plants. And that's really one of the things we focused on with Cool Beans, is we wanted a wide diversity And we did that primarily because we wanted to support a wide diversity of farmers growing a lot of these different plants. So it's everything from legumes to cauliflower to broccoli to, spices, etc. And it turns out, I don't know if you've read Fiber Fueled by
Yes, it's
Dr. Will.
right back here. Yep.
Yeah,
I
it's
got
an
them all.
amazing
I've
book.
got the list.
And we kind of happened, we were really focused on diversity of plants from an environmental standpoint, but it turns out that the diversity of plants is amazingly good for your body as well and your gut bacteria. And so we, in our 3 SKUs that we've currently got introduced, we have 15 different plants. So he recommends 30 a week. There's half of them right there. So and I think that from an agricultural standpoint, as we look forward, I think that's going to be a big element of what we have to do to repair the system, because if you have that diversity of plants, it's going to create biodiversity in animals and insects and soil, et cetera. That is all very important.
It's incredible. So I think that's a perfect segue into Cool Beans. And where did this idea come from? Because I love the entrepreneurial spirit, I feel a kindred spirit. And my son is starting his own tea company called Kind Teas. It's really fun to see these amazing companies sprout out and really looking to solve an issue. They're social entrepreneurs. Where did this come from? I'm so intrigued to hear about this.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I kind of went down this rabbit hole of climate and agriculture and what was wrong. And when I made the shift to plant-based diet, I started learning more and more about the health benefits and watched Forks Over Knives and some of these different movies. And really wanted to try to eat whole food plant-based. And I was cooking, and I had never cooked before, so I started cooking, which is great. And using a lot of spices, and it was fun. But I didn't have time to do it all the time. And I'd cook on the weekends and make big batches. And sometimes my family would eat it, sometimes they wouldn't. They weren't going on the plant-based journey at this time. And so I'd start freezing it. And then that led to freezing it into wraps that I would then take to work and eat. And I started thinking, one of the white space, if you will, was I would go into the grocery store into the prepared food section, which is primarily frozen and fresh. And I couldn't find whole food plant-based products. I could find a lot of vegan food, a lot of vegan junk food and fast food and high in oil and these different things. And I'm like, I'll eat that once or twice a week. And I'm very grateful that they're bringing people over from meat. But that is not the solution to long-term health. For Dr. Lori
no, it is not. I promise.
Right. So that's really where the idea came from. And I started talking to a bunch of people in the industry that I knew, and a couple of people latched on, really liked the idea. And there were a group of us that seed funded it and started to develop products.
That is so very cool. So do you have, I'm assuming, other recipes, or do you plan to go outside of wraps, or what is your long-term?
Yeah, so none of the products that are on the market were my recipe. What I was making was a far cry from what we came up with. We hired a very good food scientist named Maggie Sadowski, and she's in the western suburbs here. And she created the products based on the guidelines that we gave them. We didn't want oil. We wanted them to be no saturated fat. We wanted very little sugar added. And, we've got a tiny bit of oil and a tiny bit of sugar added, and that's mostly in the wrap.
Yeah, I saw that.
Gluten-free wrap, and it's got to be able to bind.
Yes.
But with those parameters, she came up with the product. So we have 3 on the market now. We have 3 more that have been developed, and we're introducing 2 more of those this year.
Excellent.
And so we'll have 5, and that's the start. We ultimately want to be a whole family of whole food plant-based products. Fantastic. So we do want to get into other things in the future, but right now we're focused on handheld wraps.
That is fantastic. Well, I was looking at your on the back of the beans, and I was looking at the ingredients, and I was actually very impressed. So as a physician, I would totally endorse this. I think this is fantastic. So every one of them, I looked through the 3 of them, and then I was like, where can I find them locally?
Yeah,
Sprouts.
That's great.
Yes, there's a Sprouts near us. That's where I will be. I live outside of Boulder, and I will be there. Yes, I'm very excited about that.
We love Sprouts. They're our biggest customer. And
oh, are they?
Yeah, yeah. And
fantastic.
If you look at those ingredients, it certainly revolves around beans because the fiber content is so great. It's good for the soil. It puts nitrogen back in. I mean, ultimately, we're trying to make beans cool again because they really are just an amazing miracle food. So
Well, and they're the food that's, the one food associated with longevity around the world. And what's really neat about your name was Cool Beans. I was like, well, plus it's just, I used to say Cool Beans all the time because my kids think I'm a nerd, I
that's
grew up in the
great.
70s, I was like, Cool
Yeah.
Beans, that's a cool, what are you talking about? What's wrong with saying Cool Beans?
We'll have
But
to
it's
send you
like,
some stickers to put on your computer.
oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
I have so many stickers on my back here.
that's great.
But yeah, Cool Beans, because it's also cool beans in the freezer, which I'm like, this is a brilliant name.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were lucky to get it. When we trademarked, we were very surprised to find that we could get it for the freezer section.
Oh, that is fantastic. No, that is really awesome. So as you said, you're transitioning yourself. Can we dive a little bit more into your personal journey and
Sure.
what that was like? Because you had mentioned you had previously been vegetarian at some point. What was
I was
that was
vegetarian back in the 90s, and that was not really. I certainly didn't know anything about climate at the time. It was probably mostly around animals, somewhat about health.
yeah.
But it actually wasn't a good journey because I was vegetarian, not vegan.
Mm,
And so I was still eating a lot of dairy, and I ended up eating a lot of pasta and cheese. And that is not going to be a good weight loss program for anybody. And so I gained weight, if anything, back then. And I tend to tell people now when I tell them about my journey that if they're going to do one change, I tend to say, give up dairy, number one. That stuff is like poison.
amen. Amen.
Yeah, and I know you've had Dr. Bernard on. I mean, I just
Oh yeah. I adore him.
there are not enough good things to say about people that are trying to get folks off of dairy. That stuff is bad. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So then you gave up the dairy.
So I started with Meatless Monday, like so many people do, right? And
Okay.
that led to Vegan Monday. Then when I knew I could do it, I did it 2 days a week, Vegan Monday and Friday. And within probably 2 months, I went fully vegan.
Awesome.
And what's interesting is that first year, and I had done a lot of yo-yo dieting in the past. I had tried, low carb and all these different diets, and I could never lose significant pounds. And I was definitely overweight, although, I didn't necessarily feel like I was overweight, but I was. And during that first year, I ate whatever I wanted. It was just plants, right? And
Right.
I lost 30 pounds in the course of that year. And I was never hungry, which is the exact opposite of all the other diets I'd ever done. And I wasn't counting, you weren't counting calories or doing anything. You're just eating plants, and all of a sudden the weight just started dropping off.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a result of that, then my family watched that and they're like, oh my gosh. And so now I've got one daughter that's pescatarian, basically. I've got,
Okay.
my wife has cut down dramatically. My other daughter doesn't eat meat, but she does still eat some dairy.
Okay.
But they're all trying to make changes as a result of the stuff they've seen. So,
Absolutely. I came home overnight. So I had a patient in
wow.
2012, and she came to me, she's like, Dr. Marbus, I can't eat meat and dairy because meat and dairy's been upsetting my stomach. I said, well, stop eating meat and dairy. I was like,
Yeah, right.
it didn't really dawn on me that was a plant-based diet because it just didn't register. I'm kind of a slow, thick skull sometimes. And I said, come back in 30 days and we'll add things in and see kind of what what was the offensive agent, and then we'll remove that completely. And what was interesting, her daughter went on the diet with her, who was 16 at the time. And at the end of 30 days, so I worked Monday through Fridays, right? So she came in on a Monday and pulled her daughter out of school to tell me what she did. And she goes, I had to bring my daughter so she could tell you exactly what she did. I was like, she got in trouble. She's missing school.
Yeah,
So
right.
I'm like, walked to her mama's appointment. Oh my goodness, like what's going on? And what happened was she goes, so Dr. Marbus, I went on the diet with my mom because if you live in Rifle, Colorado, you have 2 grocery stores and you have nowhere to eat. At least in
Yeah.
2012, anything that's even remotely plant-based, definitely more meat, not even,
2012
I
was a
mean,
different era. Yeah.
it just didn't exist in Western Colorado. I mean, the Forks Over Knives had just come out the year before. And
Right.
well, she said, well, Dr. Marbus, so we bought food, they ate and cooked everything from home. And I pulled myself off 2 ADD medications because I felt so good. I was like, you did what?
Wow.
And that really got my attention. And her mom goes, yeah, why was she able to do that? And it wasn't that her mom was mad, right? It was just her mom was like, well, why was she able to do that? Why has my kid been on these medications since she was, a young child? And now she can just change her diet in 30 days and she doesn't need it. I was like, I don't know, but that's the coolest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And I dove into the research, found, of course, the China study, the forks over nice, ordered it. I devoured that book in like 2 days. I was like showing my husband, like, they turn off cancer with plants.
Yeah. Right.
What is going on?
Yeah.
I was like mind blown. And I was like, then at that time, my kids were 13, 15, and 18. And I was racking my brain going, what am I doing? What am I going to do? And so I said, I need to try this on one more patient because I was trying to just figure it all out myself. I had a lupus patient come in about 2 weeks later, and she was very sick. She was younger than me at that time. And she's like on 12 different medications, 50 pounds overweight. Her migraines daily. And she's like, Dr. Marbas, I'm not even sure I can keep working. And here she is, just young in her early 40s. And I was like, this is devastating, to hear someone, it just hurts because you hear so many things. People tell you things in a doctor's office that they don't prepare you for in medical school. It's just sad. But what happened was, I was like, I'm thinking to myself, I said, this is the person I've been waiting for. And I don't believe in coincidences. I know things happen for a reason. And I was like, I don't think there's much more medications. How about we put you on a different diet? What's on the end of your fork? And I told her a little bit about what I knew. I was like, I know about 14 days of education, if that means anything.
Yeah, right.
And she's willing to try it. She was that desperate. And she came back in 2 weeks. We measured her CRP, which is an inflammatory marker, before she left. It was 3 times high normal on high doses of prednisone and low dose, kind of like a chemo drug to suppress her immune system. 2 weeks later, 8 pounds lighter, headaches gone. Her CRP dropped to just outside normal. 5 months later, 50 pounds lighter, off 7 to 12 medications, including all her lupus meds. And at that 2-week mark, when she showed up, I was like, I'm done. I'm going home.
I love to hear that. That's
oh my
amazing.
gosh. Threw everything out of the house overnight. And my husband's like, he's a very nice human. I thank God.
Yeah, right.
And he's like, you're still cooking? And he was like, whatever. He's Filipino. He'll eat anything. My kids are like, oh, mom's gone on the deep end again. And, my daughter went off to college and off to medical school. Actually, she's graduating medical school next month. And she took a little longer, but she's fully plant-based. But my boys, my daughter's 27, my boys are 25, will be 25 and 22. And over the first year, they're like, I would say, grade me on my cooking, tell me what's bad, what's good, because I am determined to make it so good you cannot tell me.
Yeah, right.
And that's what I did. And over the course of a year, they stopped ordering chicken when we went out. They would order tofu. And now they're such severe advocates for a plant-based diet. My husband lost 70 pounds. And so here we are.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, it's fascinating. And you wish more doctors knew, right? I mean, how do you get more doctors to know? Because so I have a good friend who I went to business school with, and then after business school, he decided, you know what? I always wanted to be a doctor. My dad was a doctor. And so he went back to med school and became a doctor.
Wow.
And he was our pediatrician. And he's a great guy, but he thought I was a quack when I first did it. Back in 2017, he's like, oh, that's just another fad. And now when I see him, he definitely knows that there are benefits of the plant-based diet. I wouldn't say he certainly isn't plant-based, right? But he knows that it can help you from heart disease and a lot of different things. Right. But how do we get, because the doctors are the advocates, right? They're the ones that could change a lot of people quickly.
Oh, let me tell you.
Yeah,
I've had colleagues unfriend me on Facebook because I'm this is the way I think of life, right? Is that, and you may feel that same urgency with making different choices in food system and sustainability. I see that in my human health experience with my patients is like, listen, I shouldn't care, number one, about your health more than you. Number two, right now I might be seeing a future that you can't even comprehend. So I feel like I have to be a doctor, like marketing. I have an MBA. It's like, that's a good thing. Those marketing classes are really helpful. It's like, I have to sell this, right? But what was interesting is trying to sell it to colleagues and understanding is like, why can't you guys see this and embrace it? You could help people reverse diabetes and hypertension. I'm like, this is the coolest thing since sliced bread. It's cool beans, right? It's like this. And what was interesting, I really began to understand behavior, and I dove into like habit formation and behavior design and just understanding the psychology. I never had a food addiction. I never had a food aversion or anything. We were poor growing up, so we ate a lot of vegetables. We had a lot of beans and potatoes because that's what we could afford. And we still had some meat, but I didn't have the luxury of to afford processed food. So I never had that unhealthy addiction. Thank goodness, right? What was interesting though is I'm realizing how much my doctor friends are really struggling. Maybe they're eating when they're tired, when they're stressed. And so I think that's part of it. But two, there's such a profound lack of nutritional
Yeah.
education. And that's the other thing. But the fun thing is that's why we started plant-based telehealth, was because I was seeing when I would go to conferences and speak, or I would go to all sorts of things, people reaching out to me all the time. She goes, how do I find a plant-based doctor? Well, there's not a whole, I mean, there are growing numbers, but how do we have someone access? Because there's states that there's not any.
Right. And
And
you kind of need to teach them in the school when they're
yes,
still impressionable, right? Because I think that
yes,
when you talk to a doctor who's 40, they pretty much have their ways and they're not, I mean, Dr.
yeah,
Joel Kahn and Dr. Kim Williams changed after having bad health scares, right? But
right.
most are not going to change later in life.
Mm-hmm,
But if you catch
mm-hmm.
them when they're in
Early.
medical school or younger,
Yeah, unfortunately, that doesn't help us jump off the cliff right now with our current health. And what we found though is that when Anthony is my business partner, we started also the Healthy Human Revolution, not the podcast. I did the podcast, but we have a website where I have courses where I try to solve every single problem someone would have to sustain a plant-based diet, because I just feel it's like I can't stop it. I
mission.
just constantly thinking about it.
That's
And
great.
my husband calls it an obsession. Like it really is. And what is interesting was he was vegetarian as well. He lost 160 pounds going to a plant-based diet
Wow.
in 2005. And so we found this, he's not a doctor. He actually worked for Big Pharma. But we were looking at this problem because we kept seeing the same problem. We'd go to
Yeah.
conferences and our friends would say, where can we send our patients? He's like, Lori, we should start our own telemedicine company. Like, are you nuts? Like, do you have any idea? And I had already been doing telemedicine for a couple of years just because of job transitions and stuff. And it was doing really well. I was doing acute care, but I would throw in my lifestyle medicine and people are coming back. And, like my
Right.
psoriatic arthritis went away. I've lost 50 pounds. And I said, it's a fantastic method, but there's a lot of hurdles. We took a year to plan. We launched in COVID.
Wow.
But again, no coincidences. Where the silver lining is that it really dropped the barriers of perceived,
Yeah. Good point.
issues with telemedicine, and doctors were looking for another way to see patients. And we have been approached by so many doctors. We've probably interviewed 40 to 50 already who wanted to do this type of
That's
thing
great.
because they're such an eager. And we've had over 2,000 patients in our first year. And so, which is a lot. I'm licensed in all 50 states just by myself because I felt as a founder, I need to be doing stuff and help people figure it out. But we've had an incredible journey, and here it is, and people are getting better. It's just been amazing. But yes, but the doctors are such an important tool because we touch, a general
It's a
panel.
great way to get to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I like that. The leverage in that model is great.
Yeah, it really is. And I've had patients, well, I should say consultant clients, because outside the country, we don't really practice medicine. It's in Egypt, Mexico, Canada, I've been in France, Switzerland, Australia. People are hungry.
Are you on
I
Clubhouse?
am on Clubhouse.
That seems like a good place to find both
Really?
plant-based doctors as well as people that might want to try the telemedicine
Telehealth stuff.
pathway.
Yeah, it's funny. I played around a little bit with it. It's pretty cool. Like I love Jimmy Chin, and I listened in on his stuff, and I was like, oh my goodness, you can listen live to these amazing people. It's Clubhouse is a really cool tool. I just haven't ventured in too much to it.
But I
But
started a whole food plant-based club on there.
oh,
And we
cool.
already have something like 600 members and followers, which is
Really,
and it was started like 3 weeks ago. So there's a lot more interest
the
in
growth.
than I would have thought. Yeah.
So how do you see, because when you talk about the plant-based journey of America, right? So there's these,
Right.
you have these pioneers. What have you seen? What has been your experience? Where do you see us going.
Yeah, and our products, I think we definitely cater to plant-based because we know that those people would want it the most.
Mm-hmm.
But our products are great for people that aren't 100% plant-based too. They're
Mm-hmm.
flexitarian or reducitarian or whatever. Um, because again, it's really healthy, good stuff for your gut bacteria with
Right.
the legumes and all the different vegetables. And it's like 220 calories, but it's very filling. So you have
Mm-hmm.
it for lunch and you don't need anything else. So it's a good solid product that for whether you're going down the road of weight loss or just trying to improve your nutrient balance.
Absolutely.
But if you looked at the plant-based, I'm really optimistic right now, and maybe overly so. Maybe I'm a crazy person, but
Oh,
I looked at the increase over the last 4 years or 5 years. It's gone from 1% to 3% of the population. 9.8 million people are identifying as vegan in the US,
wow.
which is a lot more than historical. It was
Wow.
kind of 1% forever.
Wow.
But what's really encouraging is millennials identify at a much higher
Oh,
rate, like
oh,
6%, and
yes.
Generation Z's over 10%. And
Really?
so the trend is moving in a direction. Yeah, Generation Z, they are our saviors, right? They're so focused on climate change and all the things that we should have been
Oh, yes.
focused on, but we're not.
Oh,
And
yes.
so it's just amazing to watch them. And
Yes.
they understand that you can't be an environmentalist unless you are plant-based and
Yes.
all these different things, because the meat and dairy industry are just as bad as the oil industry.
Right.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
I think I'm optimistic about the future, and we hope to be
Are
positioned.
your, how old are your girls, if you don't mind me asking?
My girls, I've got one that's 24 and one that is
Okay.
21. Yeah.
So you got a Z and a millennial as well. I'm kind of
Yes, exactly.
right where
Yeah.
mine are. And I'll tell you that youngest one, my 22-year-old Gabe, he is he's something else. So he's a senior at CU and he's majoring in film. And
Right.
he just dives into that. And my other one, Jonathan, he's more of the mind. He's very straightforward, marketing major, building a business, going on. I'm like, but they all understand this really important to one, human health, the like you said, the climate change, but there's such a compassion here that I just don't see, or maybe it's just my small perception, but in other generations of also, like, we're not alone in this world. It's not just me making this
Yes.
decision for myself. It's like my decision impacts everybody, and it's a really nice thing and refreshing thing to see in these young people. I don't my kids are some of the hardest working kids I've ever seen, and I'm like, there's these are going to be the kids that change our future, so we should be
Sure.
embracing.
Yeah, and
So
I think climate change and health bring people to the plant-based, but
yeah.
very shortly after you get there, the animals are just as important as all the other
Yes.
things. It's
Yes.
so yeah, I agree with you. The compassion really kind of takes over for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my husband used to do fly fishing, and so he taught our boys, especially Gabe, to do fly fishing. But as he moved into this plant-based diet, because it's catch and release, and you're in Colorado, and there's like amazing, we're outdoor people, and so
Yeah.
there you live in these areas. But it was interesting, like you said, over time the animals very much become important, and they're like, I morally can't do this because
No.
this is inflicting pain on a being that is not asking to be,
Right.
just for sport. And that was a really interesting thing to see happen and evolve, because you could actually rationalize and say, oh, I'm not killing it, but they realize they're beings that have pain and discomfort, and it's pretty crazy. My grandmother used to work in a slaughterhouse. She was the bookkeeper, and I would go see her for Christmas or summers and Christmases and be with her at work. And I remember sounds and seeing things, and it just didn't
I
click for
feel for
me.
those people too. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of them are immigrants that come from Thailand and
Oh,
places, and they just need a living, and they need to work. But man,
yeah.
to do that every day of your life, it would be hard to not just, the amount of death in those places. It's brutal.
I don't know how you could manage. I
Yeah.
mean, you I went to medical school at Texas Tech in West Texas. So there's a lot of meat packing plants. And, when COVID hit, my daughter's also in West Texas. Well, she'll be heading to Boston for residency in a month. But
Oh, congrats.
yeah, we're super excited. Two Dr. Marvis's.
Another plant-based doctor. Love that. Yeah.
I birthed one.
Yeah.
So I've added to this movement in many ways. But but yeah, it was really interesting. She, was just talking about the numbers of infected meat workers and how they just kept telling them to keep working. And it was really an eye opener too, just to see how that industry is actually run behind closed doors.
Yeah, it's depressing. And I've been in many different chicken plants and whatnot through my agricultural days. And it's
Wow.
a depressing place. No doubt about it.
Wow.
Yes.
So where do you see as listeners and we as individuals, because it really just comes down to the individual making a different choice. What would you suggest? What do you tell people when you're having these conversations? Maybe they go out and have conversations with their doctor or their neighbors or whoever. What would you like to advise?
It's tough. I think early on, I probably would get on the soapbox too much, and I try not to do that now. So I don't, when I order vegan, I don't ever tell anybody. I just, order. And if somebody has a question or wants to know, then I'm happy to go down, the rabbit hole with them.
Sure.
But it's, you can't change somebody that doesn't want to change, right? So there's no point in even going down that road. And, but it is depressing at times because you see people that are very overweight or whatnot, and you could help them. But how do you present that to them in a way that
loving, supportive way?
Yeah, exactly. So it's difficult, but I do see the trends moving in the right direction. More and more people learning about it from all the different aspects right now, and so hopefully with that three-legged stool, the movement will keep growing.
Yeah, absolutely. You're so exactly right. And it's hard. I get really excited. It's pretty obvious. I just love talking to people about this. And but it is, you have to be very careful. But people will challenge me and I don't know. I don't know why I do that, but I need to put the brake on a little bit more than I do, because if the waitress asks, I'm like, well, let me talk to you about it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Great place to start. It really kind of opens a door, because the hardest thing, you went cold turkey. That's hard to do. People, I had to first find out, okay, what can I eat in a day then if I do that? So trying the day and just learning that way really helps the process to realize, oh my God, there's a lot more options than I thought.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So that I think is a good
challenge. Yeah, it's interesting when people are transitioning. I went overnight just as this is my personality. It's like, just get it done, because I'm just like, I don't like pain. So I was like, let's just get it over real quick. I was up to 1 a.m. actually trying to figure out what to feed the family the next day that night. And I was like, they're not going to complain. I went to medical school with 3 little kids. They were 5, 3, and 10 months when I started medical school. And I was never a short order cook. We were both active duty military. I was like, listen, y'all eat what you get. You'll be hungry.
Yeah.
I promise you won't die. And that served us well. And they're all hands on deck. Like, they come in the kitchen, they're chopping, they're doing, it's just the way it is. So that has served me well. It's not like that in a lot of households. But when I'm working with patients that first year in 2012, I was like, I had to really reevaluate how I was talking to patients about making this major lifestyle change, which I'd never done in the first 10 years of my practice. I was like, how do I do this? And it was really interesting. But you're right, most people will transition well, and if they do like a breakfast first for a while, and then they go to breakfast lunch, and they kind of ease into breakfast lunch dinner, and they feel better, and they start seeing medications being peeled off, and you're just excited and getting them pumped about the potential and the possibilities. And I had a patient the other night, and he's like I'm only doing this to support my wife, because he's had some health issues. So she made him make an appointment. I've been seeing his wife, and he goes, but I am a carnivore. I'm like, okay. I appreciate that. But by the time I got done with, he goes, look, Dr. I am quite excited about this journey. I was like, I am too. I was like, yeah, but anyway, but you exactly right. You have to meet people where they are and adjust your message to what they're ready to hear. It really is important.
Yeah, for sure. So that's great.
Oh my goodness. Well, cool beans. there will be on our plates this weekend. I'm very
Oh,
excited.
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited for you to try them and hear which ones you like the best.
Oh, I grew up in New Mexico. Anything with beans and a wrap? Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
I,
right.
it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. I know you have different flavors, and I'm very, very excited. So tell us, where can people connect with you? Where should they look for the cool beans? And of course, we'll have
Sure.
all the links and everything. But where should people reach out if they want to speak
Yeah,
to
so
you
our
or
website
connect?
is eatcoolbeans.com, and there we have a lot of different content, but we've also got the store locator, and so that tells where all our stores are. Currently, we're in about 800 stores across the
Wow,
U.S.
amazing.
But even if we're not in a store in your area, there's a company called Vegan Essentials that delivers around the country,
Wow,
and you can buy them through there. And we're, quickly expanding with other retailers and whatnot. So that's kind of
fantastic.
where you can find us right now. And then we're on Instagram, and we're at Love Cool Beans on Instagram and Eat Cool Beans on Twitter. And
Fantastic.
yeah, so those are the main places where people interact for sure.
Absolutely fantastic. So, guys, I'm telling you, doctor approved. I've looked at the
I
ingredients.
love
Go
that.
get them. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. So, if you have hypertension, diabetes, I would have no hesitancy in recommending your foods. And I don't say that to everybody. Trust me.
that's great. I love that. Thank you very much. That's
Oh, you're welcome.
endorsement.
Yeah, I was really excited to see those ingredients, and I'm really excited. I'm like, you have every time I see a really amazing product, I just will do everything in my power to what little power I have to support and recommend. And
Yeah,
um,
before we launched, it's great that you say that. I mean, before we launched, I sent the ingredient decks to several doctors that I knew that were
nice.
plant-based, and I said, what do you think about this? And they liked it, and I sent samples then to Dr. Joel Kahn and a couple
Yes,
people, and
yes,
kind of did that up front to say, is this something you would recommend? And they loved
yes,
it. So
yes.
I love hearing that from you because it makes a huge endorsement for the product.
Absolutely. And then I really should speak to Anthony about putting some links to certain products that we support, from plant-based LSI, because we have so many people, and it's going to get a tad bit overwhelming. I'm actually booked out
Yeah.
till June.
Convenience is not everybody can cook all the time, right?
Yeah,
I love
no,
people cooking themselves, but you just can't do it all the time.
no. And that really is, one of the things that I worked on, problem solving, creating these little courses that are free at healthyrevolution.com is
Right.
literally time in the kitchen, right? So I literally break it down. But the one thing that was really interesting about when I was doing my research was the food waste.
No.
It's insane.
Yeah, it is true.
Oh my God. I couldn't believe how much money we waste on food just as our one individual, much less on a
Yeah.
broad scale. But anyway,
You
but
started the
yes,
compost. Do you compost? Do you do compost?
we're in a we downsized to a condo. We haven't started the composting component of that yet. I think we could probably do it on our little porch we
Well,
have, but
there's great services you can find.
oh,
Try to remember the link, but there are services that'll come and pick up the bucket. They'll give you
oh
a bucket,
really?
sealed bucket that you put outside your door or in your
In the
closet or
garage or
something.
something?
You
Yeah.
you put the waste in each day, seal it back up, and they'll
Okay.
come pick it up every 2 weeks.
Really?
That
Oh,
becomes then fertilizer so that we don't have to
yes.
make more nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus chemicals, right? So it's
Yes.
definitely something that we should all do, take that post-consumer food and
They might
compost it.
they might be really interesting interviews as well. See, this is where my brain goes like, well, I
Yeah.
need to interview them. There's like, I was also doing Misfit Markets. Are you
Oh
familiar with
yeah,
them?
yeah. I'm actually invested in a company called Renewal Mill that takes
Okay.
they sell to Misfit and they sell to
Oh,
Pantry and other people because what they do is they take the waste from making soy milk and oat milk, which
okay.
is a pulp that right
Uh-huh.
now, in some cases goes to landfill, in some cases goes to animals.
Okay.
But it's a nutrient dense flour that
Okay.
can if you dry it out, and they then sell that flour to people that put it into products.
Oh my goodness.
That is also a big element of the food waste that we have out there is the manufacturing process.
Wow. And what was the name of this company?
That company is called Renewal Mill, and they're in
Renewal Mill.
Oakland, California.
That's
They have
awesome.
their own brownie mix. You probably wouldn't like it though; it's very high in sugar. But it's really tasty. It is gluten-free and vegan, but it's
Gotcha.
just outstanding brownies, but they are high in sugar.
Oh, I'm sure. Now, it doesn't mean that on occasion
Yes, right.
there's not things in this house that, if you put one of those little Girl Scout cookies, those cinnamon cookies in this
I
house,
know.
I am like I zone in like a
Yeah,
missile to its
they're
target.
vegan,
It's like
right?
and they're quite delicious. Long
Mm.
time ago when I was still in Rifle, they would be selling these things like, listen, I'll give you money, but I can't have the cookies. And they thought it was fun. It's like, y'all don't understand. Stop it. I would find people would just buy cookies and stand them on my desk and not even note or anything. Like, I was like, wow, you guys are really, you're there. That's not nice.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But
Well, the other
yeah.
thing that's great about those brownies is all you do is add water and oil. That's
What?
it. And then you just
Okay,
cook.
so what's their website? Renewal
It's
Meal what?
renewalmill.com.
.com. Okay, and renewal RENEWAL.
Yeah, because it's like
Renewal Mill.
renewing the ingredients to a new use.
Gotcha.
Use.
Wonderful. That's a brilliant name as well. These are fun
Yeah.
names. All right, cool.
Okay.
And you have merch, by the way, on Cool Beans, y'all.
We
I have
do.
a
We
bandana.
no longer sell product on our website. We just sell merch, and it's Cool Beans merch. So yeah.
And the Cool Beans merch, I kind of like
Yeah.
merch. I know I shouldn't as a vegan and stuff, but I do on occasion. I have a sticker that Dr. Neil Bernard, when I first, I had met him before, but this was back in 2014. I toured his offices, the Bernard Clinic, before they opened, and he handed me this stack of stickers. He goes, "Here, Lori," and it says, "Friends don't let friends eat meat." And I have that on it, and I've been hooked on that kind of stuff ever since. I was like,
So are you a
okay,
member?
whatever.
You're a member of the PCRM? You probably have.
Oh yeah. I've been a member
We
a
love them.
long
Actually,
time.
one of my partners in Cool Beans is on the board of PCR.
Oh really?
Mark Doska. We
Oh,
love
that's
that organization.
fantastic.
They're amazing.
Oh, I'll say there are kind souls in this world, and Neil Bernard is one of them. He's one of
Yes.
the kindest people you'll ever meet. And he will, like, I could email him, call him, he responds so quickly. And it's just, he's been an amazing mentor and friend. And so absolutely, I would be, yes, I think that's fantastic. So any work we could do to support PCRM or any of these guys, they're incredible. So but oh my goodness, I could keep talking to you. I'm so thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate. And stay warm in Chicago.
Yeah, it's starting to get
here
better now. Finally, taking a while.
Yeah, it snowed 8 inches on us on Monday. I was like,
oh,
really?
did it really? Oh my god. Yeah, just
it's
when you
beautiful.
thought it was safe.
I know. But thanks everyone for listening. Please check out Cool Beans. I'm going to be eating Cool Beans. I'm recommending to my patients. I'm super stoked for you guys. And thanks you again for all your work that you're doing.
Thanks. And thanks for having me. You too.
Absolutely. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that video. Before you go though, please hit the subscribe button and the alert button so you will be notified whenever we upload any new videos. On Monday, we upload the Healthy Human Revolution podcast. Now, if you'd rather listen to the podcast, you can find it on all the major platforms, such as iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and even Spotify. On Tuesdays, we upload the Doctor's In. This is where I answer your questions. Thinking of that, could you please comment below any questions you might have about health or wellness or any topics that you would like me to cover? Now, if you're looking for more resources on how to start a plant-based diet, sustain a plant-based diet, exercise, recipes, anything regarding wellness, we've got you covered. Check out healthyhumanrevolution.com. And again, thanks for watching.